Hey guys, I'm MrPokke here. So this is gonna be our pretty much, I'm guessing, the last drip marketing for version 4.2, which is going to be our Elation Trailblazer. Unless tomorrow they release like, I don't know, a new 4-star drip marketing, which let's just be real, it's not gonna happen. We are finally gonna be essentially getting the full review of our Elation units, right? Our anniversary unit lineup in version 4.2, and that is going to be Silver SP, which is going to be Silver Wolf 999, evanescia, and at this point Elation Trailblazer, which is going to be a lightning Elation DPS. So even though my predictions, or rather my guess for evanescia, I was thinking she was not going to be a similar element to the Yao Guang, that didn't come true, but we did in fact get our Trailblazer, and that's going to be the lightning Elation. So taking a look into the description, the destination isn't the prize, the joys in the journey itself. So very reminiscent of, like, you know, it's not about a journey, or rather it's not about a destination, it's only about a journey, right? The small steps along the way and what leads to the ultimate end goal. Rejoice, weep, curse, praise. In an era of euphoria unto death, the streets are abuzz with noise. Becoming a hero or falling from the altar takes but a split second. Among the myriad masks of elation, which one will be picked up in the end? So a very quick little description, and yes, we do have the version for Stele as well as Kalos right here, both of them standing on top of, I'm guessing, like a tower, some sort of like a tower, and the weapon of choice is going to be none other than a literal lightsaber. I am guessing that is a lightsaber from the way that this thing is structured, and then the power is going to be essentially coming from the actual mask, right? The mask of the raccoon over here, and that will pretty much wrap up the entire description for their kit. So for Stele specifically, yeah, one thing I kind of want to point out is that personally, I just thought that this mask over here for AHA, I know it's supposed to be like the AHA smiling mask, but the very first thing I personally felt that this looked like was a throwback to version 2.6 with the banana quest. But that might be just me though, so it is what it is. And then taking a look into the actual platform, if you want to take a see from Stele's perspective, is that we do have a couple of these stickers over here. We have the little bit of a doggo, a couple of lights in the background, and I'm guessing the floating platforms behind are gonna be essentially what are the cities above Planet Arcadia, assuming that we are going to be standing on top of the tower within Planet Arcadia, right? And that is going to be the raccoon mask that we have seen from the version 4.0 story. So nothing too new over there. I just thought that it was extremely interesting that their weapon of choice is literally, okay, at this point, I just really think this is a lightsaber, right? So she seems to be holding it from like this hand over here, arms raised all the way up with, you know, like sniff out or whatever, and then this is just gonna activate the orange little beam that goes all the way to the sky, which means that this is our first ever Trailblazer weapon, which also means that the weapon that we're gonna be using is actually going to be, in this place, a real weapon. Because the last time for our first two paths, it was a physical bat for the physical Trailblazer, as well as a fire lance for the flame Trailblazer, and then now at this point, because we have used a hat for our imaginary Trailblazer, as well as a pen for our Remembrance Trailblazer, this actually appears to be a real live weapon, right? This is actually a sword. So I am guessing what's gonna happen for Elation MC is that there is a, I'm guessing, she might be fulfilling a role where she will be dealing a little bit more damage herself, instead of just a purely support role, just like HMC as well as RMC. Because otherwise, why would she have a weapon where, you know, the goal of a weapon is basically to deal damage, right? So that is pretty much it for our Stele's design, which honestly looks very cool. And you can even see from the little hand over here where she draws out the weapon, she is gonna be dual wielding both lightsabers at the same time. Alright, so there's actually gonna be a second lightsaber behind, followed by the first lightsaber. And this particular little handle over here, I have watched this series called Gundam. If you guys know what it is, basically there is this mechanic which allows your lightsabers from a Gundam to combine into one by attaching a handle that's extremely similar to this right here. So it will look something like this, right? Give me one second. Alright, this is gonna be really weird, but this is basically a Gundam, right? So this was built, cause I believe this is Freedom MG 2.0 by your streamer. So one thing you notice for the Gundam is that for this particular lightsaber, there is a protruding end towards the tip over here, where if you were to just take a slightly closer look, they usually tend to make these models having the tip have the ability to do this little connection. So it's now a giant lightsaber, with 2 different lightsabers combined to one. Now, this is like not really part of our usual reacts, but I just felt that this looks very, very similar to the design that Stella has over here, where she could look like she can combine her first lightsaber she's holding up with the secondary lightsaber to combine the 2 different lightsabers. Or rather, one big lightsaber. If I'm wrong, then it is what it is, but if I'm right, then I just thought it was a very interesting touch. So that is gonna be there for our Stella portion. Then jumping into Mr. Cassius, which is pretty much gonna be in a very similar way, except that you can kind of see this tip being a little bit more pronounced. It's like a little bit more extended, and I just thought that bro looks extremely happy. Like, why is he so much happier compared to Stella? Where Stella looks a little bit more like, what is the word? It's like smug, right? She looks more smug, but like Kalos is like super, super happy. So bro is just glad to be here. And that is gonna be pretty much first impressions, first looks as to how they are going to be looking like. And now we're just going to be discussing a little bit on my thoughts on essentially at this point the full lineup for version 4.2, and that's going to be Elation Trailblazer, Silver 99, as well as evanescia, right? Maybe some of their kids, what to expect in the future, team building, all that kind of stuff. No leakers, just me guessing. So as of this current point, like I mentioned at the very start of the video, personally, I think from the way that this looks, for the first time in a long time, our Trailblazers actually have access to a proper weapon, right? A dual-wielding lightsaber weapon for both Kalos as well as Stella. So because of this particular portion, and it is not something that we have seen for like literally 2 years after using a book and a hat, we have finally gotten access to something that could deal a little bit more damage. So what I'm guessing and what I feel is that this damage, right? This weapon, it aligns pretty nicely with how Elation feels as a whole, because from what we can tell from like Sparksy and even Yao Guang, both of these units being Elation, they also deal some kind of like secondary damage, right, in terms of their AHA skills. So for example, if Elation Trailblazer is going to be having an AHA skill, which is going to be via the Raccoon Mask, I am guessing she's probably going to be using her lightsabers to do the additional AHA follow-up instant damage during the actual point where you can go for it and apply some kind of debuff, additional toughness bar damage, generate punchlines, whatever that's gonna be. Second of all, I believe that because of the way that Hoyoverse structures their MCs ever since at least I would say Panacony, every single one of these supports, right, every single one of these Trailblazers, they have never been a type to go main DPS, which is why I personally think it's a very, very high unlikelihood that they will ever become a main DPS, because this would mean that players would have to build a team around Elation Trailblazer. And from the way that you can see that the units are being pushed out, generally speaking, I would say that you will want to release Trailblazers that will have the highest amount of usage rate for the general population, because everybody is going to be having an access to an Elation Trailblazer, right? Very much similar to how HMC was given for Firefly, right? Was given for Reba, was given for Boothill. Whichever DPS you want to run HMC with, they are going to work. So I think a very similar path, or rather a very similar thing, can be said for Elation Trailblazer, where whichever main Elation DPS you want to run her with, she's probably going to slot in, right? Be it, is it going to be Silver 999, whether is it going to be evanescia, whether or not both of them are also going to be considered as main DPS by themselves, or even maybe as a team by a whole, that is going to be completely dependent on their kits. But I would say it is a little bit unlikely that you will see evanescia, Silver Wolf, and EMC all at the same team, because if Silver Wolf, or rather if Elation Trailblazer, Silver Wolf, and evanescia, if none of them are the sustains, then we still need to find one more sustain slot to fit this entire team, which also means players who pull for Yao Guang as well as Sparksy, they don't really have a proper slot to run them in within this current version 4.2 lineup, right? So I think it is really, really more likely that Silver Wolf as well as evanescia, they are probably going to be splitting up into 2 different teams, which is what I have discussed for evanescia's Drip Marketing React. If you want to understand a little bit more, you can check out the previous video. So because of that, you will still have one more additional slot to slot in either Yao Guang or Sparksy, depending on which team you're going to be running them in. Otherwise, it really drives down the incentives of why people even pull for Yao Guang and Sparksy in the first place, right? Unless Elation Trailblazer happens to be a sustain. Alright, because we technically have seen the exact same thing happening for Hyacinth, where after Hyacinth goes for the Remembrance buff, she is actually a sustain. I mean, she is basically at the heal and everything. So I would be quite surprised if Elation Trailblazer does turn out to be a sustain, because generally speaking, if she is going to be a sustain, then it'll be the first time ever since Fire Trailblazer came out. And we haven't even gotten an Abundance Trailblazer yet, right? So I'm leaning towards hoping that she's going to be a support, hoping that she's going to be a sub DPS, hoping that she's going to give you more utility for the DPS, or rather whichever Elation DPS are going to be using. And this kind of brings me to the topic about like general usage, right? Generalist support, right? How many teams are you going to be running EMC in? And I personally think that she is most likely going to be sticking with a very similar sentiment compared to HMC. I don't think she's going to be in the same realms as RMC, where every one of their mounts could just basically make use of RMC's true damage, additional action, very advanced. I think they're going to be toning that back down a little bit and sticking with a way more niche option, specifically for the path of Elation. So this entire archetype as a whole is going to be able to take place with a lot more synergy, because the more general you make a unit, then the less synergistic they will get for a specific team comp, right? So I think the best example is kind of like Runmei, right? She was really good, and even till this day she's still really good, because you're going to be running on the break team. But after the inclusion of Dahlia, as well as previously Fuke, whenever you want to run a sustainless super break team, people are already starting to lean towards HMC instead of Runmei, just for the super break damage multiplier, because Runmei does not have that. So unless Runmei gets a buff to also include super break damage multiplier for herself, she will start to eventually get outskilled, and the winner's break efficiency is not going to be enough anymore. Another thing could be said for Robin, right? Robin was a very generous attack scaling DPS support. Nowadays, you really only run her with, I would say, sustainers facials, because she's one of the only teams that can give you enough energy to keep 100% uptime on your Robin's ultimate, right? So that being established, I'm going to be hoping that Elation Trailblazer is going to be leaning to a more niche support role instead of a general purpose, because if she's going to be another general purpose support, then the likelihood of replacing her is going to be much higher, all right? Think about it this way. If you do have a general support in Elation right now, it is just a matter of time before they release the upgraded version of the Trailblazer eventually in the future, right? This has happened for HMC after Fuke and Dahlia came out. This has happened for RMC after Cyrene came out. So I really just think it's a matter of time before eventually this is the free version we get. It's probably going to be really strong, because we have no other options, no other alternatives to use beside EMC. But eventually towards the end of our version 4, or towards the end of the Elation shielding, there's most definitely, almost certainly gonna be a upgrade towards EMC. So if that upgrade is gonna be a lot stronger because your EMC was too general, then the usability of EMC is gonna be much lower, right? There will be very little incentive for you to keep using EMC if she's just gonna be more generic. On the flip side, if she's going to be a more niche support, right, she's really purely dedicated just for the Elation archetype, then when the upgrade comes out, it might get a little bit more difficult to fully replace, or maybe you can just run them both at the same time. Who knows by that point, right? So that is gonna be my 2 cents on this thing. Now, with regards to whether or not she's gonna be a better slot for like Sparksy, a better slot for like Silverwolf, even Nisia, all those will depend on how the main DPS is gonna be and the actual kit of punchline generation, as well as AHA extra instance. From what I see right now, the only way we get AHA instance is pretty much with Yao Guang's ultimate. Unless EMC has additional utility that can give us additional, maybe like AHA speed to get more AHA instance as a whole, then I could see that, you know, Sparksy's value is going to go up because she's going to be giving us the punchlines, right? And on the flip side, if EMC is going to be giving us a lot of, I would say, punchlines instead, right? So every single time you use your skill or full auto attack or your lightsabers, you're going to generate way more punchlines, then Yao Guang's value is going to go up a lot more, because this would then effectively reduce the demand to have more punchlines for the rest of the team. Breaking news! Okay, wait, I'm literally in the middle of recording my session, but wow, we do have the version 4.2 Nova Flare update for Firefly, Scylla, and well, Firefly. Okay, I'll be talking about this in a separate video later on where I'm going to be streaming, so don't worry about it, but just breaking news, I'm just going to insert in this video as a little bit more of a bonus, right? So it is what it is. Anyways, back into Elation Trailblazer again. One thing I kind of want to take a note is I am really interested to see how are the Relic options going to be like for this particular unit, because from what we have right now, the magical girl set as well as the other set, I don't think they are too feasible with EMC. Especially if she's going to be fulfilling the role of a sub DPS. And I don't think Elation Trailblazer is going to be having a Mimo sprite unless, you know, Mimi comes to the picture and she starts swinging at her mini lightsabers. I think probably what will happen is that by version 4.2, we are also going to be expecting another 4-piece relic, which will be a lot more suitable for this specific type of like a sub DPS-ish kind of supports for EMC. If that is not going to be the case, then I can expect Elation Trailblazer to become extremely fast, very similar to Yao Guang, and then both of them just going to be running the same 4-piece diviner, right? But if that is going to be the case, then you're going to be having a very, very hard time gearing both units at the same time because you have an extremely high speed requirement. So I'll be looking forward to see the gearing option in the future. From our light cone's perspective right now, I don't think there are too big of an issue, especially because Mushroom Light Cone is free from the MOC shop, and you can just either run it with Yao Guang or her. Then if you do have the Battle Pass Light Cone, it's going to be giving you a little bit more extra damage, right? So I kind of just want to wrap this video up right now. It's going to be definitely a lot shorter compared to the other two because, you know, I just saw the news where, you know, where's bro? Yeah, so I literally just got a news where, like, you know, Firefly is getting a buff and like Noah Flare. So I'm gonna be talking about this very soon in my live stream. TLDR Elation Trailblazer is gonna be announced. This is the full lineup for the version 4.2 anniversary with our 3 Elation units plus our Sparksy and Yao Guang, and that's gonna be 5, which means that of 5 units, 2 of them are most likely gonna not be in the same team because we are still lacking the Elation sustain unless EMC is going to be a sustain by herself. Then at that point, you're probably looking at EMC, Sparksy, Yao Guang with either Silver Wolf or Evanescia. But if that's gonna be the case, then future Elation units, I'm guessing Hilux is probably in the Elation. I'm thinking. It might be a little bit more difficult when it comes to team building as well as Blade SPR. So for all those, we'll take a look in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed this quick little drip marketing. I'm just so shocked that, you know. Wow. Alright, so word of the day is gonna be wow. Join Twitch, join Discord, use code POKE for 10% on Gamersubs. All the best, guys. See you guys next time. Take care.